back. It's Damian Gerard, your host of the Gerard Realty Show. And as promised, Mr. Mudry, Mike Mudry from USA Mortgage is with us.
Hello, Damian.
Mike, how are you?
Never been better.
Well, I am glad to hear that. We had a great conversation last week about some upcoming changes in the FHA rules that are coming June 15 of this year, and people need to be ready for that. If you are out there and you're thinking about buying a house and you're thinking about FHA, you got to be ready because there's some changes coming. If your agent doesn't know what they are, you need a new agent.
You're welcome to call me, 314-503-6024.
Or get a new agent, or both.
Or both.
Yeah, either one. So we also talked a little bit about, in our contract minute last week, we talked about the appraisal. And that got us to thinking that we should talk about the appraisal process because most transactions, Alfonso, back me up because that's what you do. Is back up. Most transactions have an appraisal. And if there's a lender involved, it's a requirement.
That's right.
So, Mike, if you're going to lend somebody money to buy a property, you are going to require that there's an appraisal. And I'm going to go out on the limb here, and I'm going to say that I think, just my personal opinion, and I do this a lot.
Yes, you do.
But I think the appraisal process is kind of a joke.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion.
Of course I am.
I'm backing up on this one, Damian, because I agree.
Because it's my show, so I get to say whatever I want.
Okay, so
and so the reason why I think it's a joke here, and I understand, I'm going to make appraisals mad, but here's the first thing that strikes me as just odd is if the appraisal is so correct, and if the appraisor is so good at determining value, right?
Yep.
Why do we have to tell him what the contract price was?
I like that.
That's right. If a buyer and a seller agree on a price, and the buyer's price was established by some sort of competitive market analysis when he listed the house, and the seller's price was, and the buyer's price is established based on having looked at probably at least 6, if not 10 or 20, 30 houses.
Right.
And they get together, right? So they agree that the house is worth $260,000. And the appraiser is going to go out to verify that number to make sure that it's not, that he's not going to borrow, $500,000 on a $260,000 house. That would be bad. I get it.
Yep.
So they're going to call you and you're going to say, okay, that's great. Take the application. And then you're going to say, now the next step is for the appraiser to go out.
That's right.
And so the appraiser says, okay, I'm going to go out and tell you what that house is worth. Oh, by the way, what was your agreed to price?
Yeah.
Well, if he's so smart. And if she's
Mike,
so
why
good,
why
do I have to tell her? Why don't they just go out and tell me what the house is worth?
Appraisers would typically get a copy of the contract because there's certain things that could be in a contract that they would need to note in the appraisal. Like if there's any seller concessions and things like that, they have to be accounted for on the report.
Okay.
So they're going to get a copy anyway, whether or not that, they of course want to have an idea of what ballpark they're in. As far as the price is concerned. But I have actually had an appraisal done without a contract. Appraisers could do. Okay, well, they could do it.
Here's my proposal. From now on, let
me make a quick point. We do appraisals on refinances all the time, and there's never a contract.
I understand that, but that's my point. When there is no contract, I think there's a call for an appraisal. Get a third-party person because you got a homeowner says, hey, I would like to borrow $1 million on my $200,000 house. You got to go see if it makes sense. But what I'm saying is when there is a contract, here's my proposal. From now on, appraisals, they go out, they do the appraisal, and then after they give us the number, then we show them what we agreed to.
Yeah, I like that one.
Well,
so we got a little check and balance.
Unfortunately, I don't make the rules.
That's kind of what the American system is based on.
Unfortunately, I don't make the rules.
And I know they're not your rules, but
every agency, whether that's FHA, VA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, has their requirements for what is required on appraisal. Because if they're going to loan you $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $1 million, they make the rules.
I get it.
And they say that the appraisal has to conform to certain standards on every loan.
And I am just a lowly realtor here in the hinterlands of St. Louis. We're just out here trying to help people with the buying, owning, and selling of real estate.
And that's what I'm trying to help. But I venture to say
a new rule for those.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
And I venture to say that if you were going to loan somebody $500,000 or $200,000 of your own money, and you were going to do that on a regular basis, you would want some uniform standard from loan to loan of what a house is worth.
I wouldn't care.
And that's basically what it is.
I just give them the money.
Now, Damian, let's say the house is $260,000 agreed contract price. What does the appraisal come back every time?
$263,500.
Yeah,
$264,000.
like just a hair over or the same number.
Right,
because
the appraiser, and this is again my opinion, send the cards and letters to my office.
Yes,
and
don't send them to Mike Mudry.
Because they're going to come out and say, yeah, this is about right. But
let
me tell
right.
you,
we know we're right.
But here's my other contention with that.
Okay,
is that appraiser could just as easily have said, oh, I'm sorry, that house that you agreed to buy, buyer and seller arm's length transaction, didn't know each other, just had numbers to deal with, and you agreed it was $265. I think it's $263. Sorry, you can't have it.
Okay,
right?
so
it could be $267 or $263, his pick.
Can I get a word in here?
You got to fight for it. That's what we're saying.
So every appraisal has a grid sheet where an appraiser makes adjustment based on certain factors on an appraisal.
Right.
And they're called gross and net adjustments based on the comps, the comparable sales that this particular home is being compared to.
Right.
And they have to be within certain ranges.
Alfonso, did we do that when we were doing the comps for the house?
Of course we did.
Oh, we did.
We do those adjustments.
But you don't have an appraiser's license. Okay.
No, we're better than appraisers. No,
because we only do.
So you have those nuances in the purchase price to the appraised price, the contract price because of those net and gross adjustments.
Yeah, but so you just use a great word that I get to argue about again.
Nuance?
The nuance. Because what's the true value of a house? Is it square footage?
Somebody will pay for it.
Bedrooms and bathrooms? No, it is not. I'm telling you, it is not. The physical attributes of the house are not what creates value. What creates value is the nuance. It's the love and affection you feel for the house when you walk into it. Am I right?
For a buyer, that's right.
That's right. Because buyers, it's an emotional decision. So it's not brick and mortar. It's emotions, Mike. It's nuance.
But for the lender, it's not an emotional decision. Okay?
It's money.
It is. That's right. It is just the uniform process that every loan program has to meet the appraisal requirements.
Well, and here's another. And again, we're just kind of chatting this because I think
fun.
we are having fun because we get to argue.
Yeah.
And I'm going to win because here's my other point.
Because you're the host.
Here's what's funny. And Alfonso, as a Gerard Realty Group salesperson, you run into this all the time, right? So we've had it's pretty rare that the appraisal comes in below the agreed value. That's pretty rare.
It is rare,
right?
Yes.
And when that happens, there are three options, like we talked about. Buyer can walk away, renegotiate, or ignore it, right?
Exactly.
And typically, if the appraisal says it's $5,000 or $10,000 less, do the buyers, is that just plain okay, or do they want to maybe renegotiate the contract?
They always want to renegotiate.
Right.
They're not going to pay over the appraisal price.
I agreed to pay you $300,000, and Mike's hired an appraiser to come in. He tells us it's only worth $290,000. Is your buyer happy about that?
No.
Do they agree? Do the sellers get to renegotiate the contract to strike the new price at $290,000?
No.
No, they do not.
No.
But what if that $300,000 purchase price that we've agreed to on an arm's length transaction based on competitive market analysis, what if that comes in at $310,000? Are the buyers happy about that?
Oh, they're ecstatic.
Do they get to renegotiate the contract
to pay more? No, and they wouldn't anyway.
It just doesn't happen. So, I mean, I've never had that happen. I've had, and I guess at the end of the day, the reality is that the appraisals are a verification process to make sure
it's a protection for the buyer and the lender to make sure that the value is there, that the home is marketable, there aren't any characteristics of it that would prevent an agency loan, a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loan.
There have been times when there's been abuse, when people were in collusion and borrow above the value. And
appraisal manipulation and so on.
So I'm kind of giving you a hard time.
I can take it.
I still think that the value agreed to should not be disclosed to the appraiser until after his appraisal is done. So I wish we had more time because there are actually a bunch more things that we could talk about.
Yeah, there's quite
the
a few.
appraisal process and what it means and how to do it.
And what happens if it comes in low and what you really can do from an appraisal standpoint. You can do a reconsideration. Right. There's a number of things.
So, but of course, we're out of time. As always, it's Damian Gerard and Alfonso Gigante and Mike Mudry, and we will be right back.